So earlier in the year, I asked the question, if we were sitting down for a cuppa, what would you want to ask me? So I thought it would be fun today if we just sat down, had a cuppa together, and I answered some of these questions, because you guys ask really great questions. I literally had thousands of you respond, so bear in mind, I'm not going to be able to answer all of those questions today, but I'll try and theme them. And so if you like this style of video, let me know in the comments, because maybe we can do this again sometime. So if you haven't already, make yourself a cuppa, and then we'll go into the other room where we can find a comfortable seat. I think we'll go into the office, which I haven't really given you an update on recently. Look, it looks like a bit of a shit show, and it kind of is. So the first question is, how do you find time to practice, and how do you not feel selfish for it? My daily practice is about, if I don't, I go into overwhelm really quickly. I become a cranky mum. I become a not very nice version of myself, and I like myself better when I practice daily. So that for me means a 10-minute minimum, and I try to do it as soon as I get up. But I want to preface this with this year, so my youngest is 4, is the first year I've been able to get out of bed without him waking and following me and wanting my attention immediately and me needing to do all the things for him. So that hasn't worked prior to this year. So for the last 11 years, I've just been fitting it in wherever I could. It's just been oh look, they're busy for 10 minutes, I'm gonna do a quick 10 minutes. Or, oh look, they're happy playing outside, I'm gonna do my yoga practice out here on the grass. Or when we lived at the beach, it was on the beach, or it's in the lounge room. So really, how do I find time to practice? I don't put a time limit on it. I don't think I have to do an hour. 10 minutes is kind of like my minimum. Inevitably, I end up doing more. Nowadays, how do I find time to practice? I'm getting up earlier and I'm having some dedicated time. And oh my gosh, for the first time in 11 years, it feels amazing. So if that's possible for you, I really recommend giving yourself that time. On not feeling selfish, I think it's so important to reframe it, because so often I talk to mums and I say to them, but does your partner take time for themselves? And often they're like, yeah, they take time to do this and to this. And it's like, do they feel selfish? Why have we as mums somehow been given this narrative that time away from our kids means we are somehow less of a mother, or that's us being selfish in some way? And I reject that idea. I don't think it's selfish to take time. You've probably heard you can't pour from an empty cup. You need to give yourself that time first. And all of that is well and good. I reject it. I think it's a stupid idea, and yet I feel it so much, and I have felt it so much in the past. So I understand why you feel selfish, but I think where we can just notice and acknowledge those thoughts, because somewhere in society, somewhere in our family, we've been programmed with this idea, and it's really hard to pull it out, where you can just notice it and be like, yeah, I have this kind of icky feeling about it, but actually I know how important it is for me to feel good. I know how important it is for me to set the tone for my whole family, and taking time for myself, whether that be to practice, whether that be to sleep, whether that be to go and hang out with your girlfriends, whatever it is so important. And you can feel that thought, that feeling, that emotion of feeling a bit guilty, a little bit selfish, and you can put it aside, or you can allow yourself to feel it, and you can do it anyway. All right, next one. This question I love. How are you doing? So simple. Thank you for asking. Look, at the time of filming this, it's currently week 9 of our school term. We have 1 more week left until our Easter school holiday, so we'll have 2 weeks off. So that for me means less in-person work. Obviously, my online business keeps rolling throughout the holidays, but I usually back off a little bit on the online work during the holidays anyway. We have a wedding these holidays. My sister-in-law, so my husband's sister, is getting married, which is so, so exciting. So I'm feeling very much like my head is very full of all the things. I've got to do a fair bit to finish work off before the end of term. February and March have been very busy with birthdays and social events leading up to the wedding. I've got a few more things to tick off my list that I need for the wedding. It's very, very full in here. But I'm good. I feel like this season with kids at school has allowed a really nice balance of me actually feeling like I have some time for me. Luca has now hit full swing with school. We're no longer having upset moments at drop-off. He's like, see ya, and off he goes with his brothers, which is so nice to know that they're so happy, and he's so excited to go to school, and he's learning so much. And it just feels like a little bit of, we made it. which feels really nice. House-wise, we've still got a lot to finish. We're also at the same time madly trying to save for an overseas holiday in September and October this year. So while I am noticing that this season has definitely given me more physical space in terms of I'm not with my kids all the time, I feel like I've got less mental space. There are so many more things to organize with sports, extracurricular, all the stuff that's going on with school, all the things we need for school, plus overseas holidays, the wedding, all of these things, my business. It's never ending, but how am I doing? I'm doing really good. Thank you for asking. All right, the next one is, how do you find work-life balance? And I find this such a funny question because I don't ever really feel like I'm balancing any of it. I feel like some weeks I'm doing really well on the family front, like I've remembered that it's Harmony Day, I've got the socks ready, I've got the shirt ready, I've got the gold coin ready, and at the same time, I haven't made a video for this week, I don't have one pre-scheduled, I haven't written a blog post, I haven't responded to my emails. So that's one week. The next week, I've got my videos ready to go ahead of time. I'm all up to date with my editing. I've got filming planned, ready to go for my next day off. And I forgot the school trials and we missed them for my eldest and he's devastated. And like, this is just kind of the ongoing reality of my life and one that I'm trying to accept. I don't think I'm ever gonna have winning in all areas. And I think I'm getting better at accepting that I can't do and be all the things. And that sometimes I'm going to disappoint my kids because I forgot the thing that they really wanted to do, and I'm going to help them work through that disappointment. And sometimes my business is going to suffer a little bit because I haven't done the thing that's going to help grow it, and blah, blah, blah. Practically, how do I create work-life balance? I have to write everything down because I forget it. So I have a calendar system on the fridge. I also use Google Calendar so that can keep track of kind of work schedules and upcoming appointments that my husband also needs to know about. And then I have a physical day-to-day calendar where I write down everything I want to do that day, because if I don't, I will forget it. All of that being said, thank you for believing I have work-life balance. I absolutely don't. It's a complete juggling act, but obviously I'm doing something right if I'm making you think I have it all together. All right, this next question I really like. When nothing is going right, what self-care practices do you do? I think this is so good because I think it's really helpful to acknowledge that sometimes life is just really shit. Shit things happen, we lose loved ones, things don't work out as planned, our hearts get broken, even down to those simple moments where it feels like everything's going wrong, where you just have a day where you forget everything, everyone's cranky and angry and it just feels like, ugh. I think it's good to have an idea of what it is in those moments that helps you the most. So let's teleport ourselves back to last year when I lost a very dear friend of mine. I was grieving. We were also going through a legal battle around this house with the builder who didn't want to go away and stop building, but also didn't want to build the house, and then finally ended up going under and we had to do it all ourselves instead. Last year was a really tough year. The self-care practices that I used at that time, I think the number one thing has to be, I just gave myself a big old break. The things and the standards I usually held myself to, I let drop. A lot of this, a lot of my business, a lot of the things I normally do week to week on good weeks, I didn't do anymore. You may have noticed I published a lot less videos. You may have noticed I was really quiet on email or socials. Maybe you didn't notice at all because I also have created a business that does a lot of this without me. But I just, on a personal level, gave myself that big break. Talking to friends, immensely helpful. Sleep is amazing. When you're struggling, try and sleep more. Don't underestimate the power of getting extra sleep. When you're struggling with something, your body is working extra time. When you're stressed, it's using extra energy. Extra sleep is going to help to counteract some of those overwhelmed feelings that we feel at that time. All right, the next one. How long did it take to build your business and how long did it take for it to become profitable? Honestly, 8 years. When I started my business, did I know it was going to become a business? Not really. When I first started, so way back in its first iteration, it was a blog. I'd had my first son, we were living out west, I didn't have a lot of physical community around me, and I really loved the online community of mums at that time who were blogging. Blogging and mum blogs were really big at the time. So I started as a blog and didn't really see how. I knew people were making money from blogs, but wasn't really trying to make money from blogging. So I then moved into sharing my love of yoga. Again, still didn't really feel like it was going to make me money, or knew how it was going to make me money, or how it was going to be a business. So I would have to say the business as it stands now probably didn't really start until 2015, which is when my second son was born. And so I think at that point I was quite conscious of the fact that I didn't really want to go back to teaching high school because that took so much time away from my kids. And I didn't really want to go back to teaching loads of studio classes because it's not that practical with a family, a lot of split shifts. You're often at the studio at bedtime, which I didn't want to do. So when my second boy was a couple of months old, I started sharing some yoga with kids. I started with an ebook. I still was like muddling around. I didn't really know how my business would make money, what I would be charging for. I thought I would sell the ebook. I ended up giving it away for free. And in that first year, I tried a whole range of things. I tried selling a course. I ended up going with the membership model, which has now morphed into my online yoga circle. It really just started as a place for mums, not so much the pregnancy and the fertility component, but they came along later. And I think my second boy was 1 when I first opened that online yoga circle and started selling memberships. So I would say 2016 was when I first really started earning some consistent income from my business. That being said, it was probably around the $200 to $500, maybe $1,000 on a good month for a couple of years after that. So maybe 2017, 2018. By 2019, I'd probably jumped up to around the 2,000 a month mark. And then in 2020, it kind of skyrocketed. I think COVID played a big role in that. People became more open and willing to use online tools for their yoga practice. And at that stage, I guess I had really great timing in terms of I already had a library of classes on my YouTube channel and in my membership, and I also had products for sale. So at that time, all the ducks were kind of already in a row, ready for when I started getting massive traffic. So 2020, 2021 kept going up, up, up. 2022 kind of plateaued a little bit, but I still held that amazing income level. Incredible when you think about the fact that I did so much less work last year because of the whole house saga that was going on. But now that I'm back to putting so much extra energy and effort in, and I have extra time now that my kids are in school, I'm seeing some really strong growth both from my website traffic and my YouTube channel. I'm not sure if I really answered that question well at all. I think we think business growth is going to be like this, but it's actually like this, especially if you're not trained in business. Like I have no business training. I'm a yoga teacher, I'm a high school English teacher, and I have a master's degree in guidance and counseling. I don't have any formal traditional knowledge in business at all. Everything I have learned has been from online, has been from other people running businesses online, watching what they're doing, trying it in my own business and trying to make it work for myself and for my family. Because that was really something that I wanted from the start, is it had to fit with my lifestyle. I don't do live classes because they don't really fit with my lifestyle. Inevitably, something will happen with the kids, they'll get sick and I can't do it live. And so I've really tried to keep everything that I do in my business really on my time, on my terms, so that it feels really good. For the most part, I put about maximum 10 hours a week into my business. And I would say this has been pretty consistent. Of course, there have been ebbs and flows as I've had babies, as I've had miscarriages, through hard times and good, but I would say 10 hours on average is pretty much what I've put in over the last 8 years. I would say it probably took me about 3 or 4 years to be earning something that I would even call an income, 5 years until it was earning something that I can consistently rely on as income. And the good news is all of that is passive. If I were to stop uploading videos today, that income would keep rolling in. It does tend to plateau, as I learned last year when I took about 3 months off to finish this house, but that income is passive and it is something that I can rely on, which is just incredible. All right, last question. What do you do when your older kids trigger you? I think this is interesting because I wonder why this person has asked about older kids specifically, because to me, my kids have triggered me from the moment they were born. And I think because the word trigger is around challenge, it creates an emotional response in me that I then have to deal with and try not to put on the child when it's not about them, it's always about me. For me personally, I try to keep the mindset of whatever they're saying and doing is not always what they say and mean. For instance, I know my eldest will trigger me when he says something and it comes across really rude. And a part of me wants to like jump on that. But often when I stand back from that and take a breath, I'll notice that actually he's trying to get some sort of point across. He just didn't have the ability to word that in a way that would come across well. Because if I jump on him for that, if I jump down his throat for it, often I see an emotional response in him that is like, whoa, what's happening here? But if I take that moment and realize that, oh, hey mate, actually the way you said that was quite rude. Maybe you could say it like this next time. Typically, the next time he does it, he responds in a way that is less rude and we get less of that triggering happening. I guess the answer to that is put some space between that emotion that you're feeling and your reaction to it, because our first reaction is always going to be defense, because we know our body, when it is triggered, is stressed. It goes into a stress response. So we are literally going into fight or flight mode. So perhaps you go on the defense with words, with shouting, whatever it is you do when you're triggered. Just putting some space and training yourself that there needs to be space between that emotional reaction, that trigger, and your reaction is going to help. And I think this works whether your kids are older or younger. If they're having a tantrum, do you have to respond right this minute? Obviously, if they're being unsafe, you do. But if they're safe, can you let them go for a minute? Can you take a minute to yourself to gather yourself before you respond so you can respond in a calmer way? Whatever it is that's triggering you, I think that space, and I think the way that we do that is taking a breath, noticing the body, so noticing whatever's going on physically for you. Sometimes if I'm standing, heel drops, where you drop your heels down, is enough to kind of put me back in my body. Some people use tapping, so just physically tapping on the body, just as a point of awareness to bring you back into your body. Whatever it is, whatever you put in between there, get something that you can do and do reliably in between the trigger and your reaction so that you can respond from a place of being calm and centered instead of responding from a place of fight or flight, which is usually what your kids are doing. They're in fight or flight and they're triggering it in you. If you can put some space between you and them in terms of that reaction, you're going to find that life is a lot calmer. If you are still learning how to do this, I would recommend getting into a yoga practice, getting into a meditation practice, a mindfulness practice. All of these things are teaching you how to be aware of that emotional reaction so that you don't have to react on your first instinct, which is often not our best reaction when we're raising little people. All right, thank you so much for all your questions. I really enjoyed the variety of them. Like I said, I have literally thousands of them from those of you who responded to my survey earlier in the year. And I would love the opportunity to actually sit down and have a coffee with each and every one of you. And while that's not possible, I like that we can do it in this space as well. If you have any follow-up questions for me, or perhaps you didn't get to fill in that original survey, you can ask any of your questions that you have for me in the comments below, and I'll see you soon.